Imagine standing in the middle of a quiet forest and suddenly you hear footsteps circling you, even though you know you're completely alone. But what if I told you this wasn't just a scary story, but a real case so terrifying that even the FBI stepped away without answers? It began on a crisp October morning in 1978, inside Oregon's Mount Hood National Forest. The place was known for breathtaking pines, winding trails, and crystal-clear rivers. Families camped here all the time. But for one 8-year-old boy named David, the forest became the place where he was last seen alive. David was bright, curious, and fearless. His parents described him as adventurous, full of energy, always ready to explore. That weekend, his family pitched their tent at a popular campsite surrounded by other campers. Nothing felt unusual, nothing felt dangerous, until the second morning. That morning, David's mother remembered watching him chase a squirrel only a few feet away. She turned her head for less than a minute. When she looked back, David was gone. At first, she thought he was hiding, playing a game. They called his name, no answer. They searched the trees nearby. Silence. Within minutes, panic set in. The forest felt too quiet. No laughter, no footsteps, no rustling leaves. David had vanished without a trace. The search began immediately. Rangers, volunteers, even helicopters scoured the area. Dogs picked up David's scent along the trail, followed it for a short distance, and then suddenly, nothing. The scent ended abruptly, not faded, not weak, just ended, as if David had stepped off the face of the earth. And then came the first chilling discovery. 3 days later, far from the campsite, in a section of the forest experts swore no child could ever reach alone, searchers found David's jacket. It was neatly folded, sitting on a rock. Next to it lay one of his shoes, upright, laces tied. The items weren't dirty, they weren't torn. They looked carefully placed, almost staged. Imagine the shock of finding that. You're searching for a lost boy. You expect signs of struggle, a trail, anything, but instead you find clothes displayed like a message. Who put them there, and why? Some believed David had been abducted, but who would sneak into a crowded campsite in broad daylight, take a child, and vanish without being seen? Others whispered about wild animals, but predators don't fold jackets or place shoes neatly on rocks. Then a detail emerged that deepened the terror. A hunter came forward saying that on the very day David disappeared, he saw something unusual. From a distance, standing in the tree line, he spotted a tall, pale figure watching him. The hunter swore it wasn't human. It didn't move naturally. It didn't make a sound. Before he could react, the figure slipped back into the shadows. Rangers dismissed it as imagination, but the timing, the description, it was impossible to ignore. Still, the search continued. Days turned into weeks, no sign of David, until months later, when another discovery left investigators speechless. Nearly 40 miles from the campsite, a hiker stumbled upon a child's backpack. It was weathered by rain, but intact. Inside were crayons, pages of drawings, and a toy car. David's parents confirmed it was his. But how could an 8-year-old travel 40 miles across rivers, cliffs, and dangerous terrain? And how could he leave no tracks, no witnesses? And here's where things turned from strange to terrifying. The backpack wasn't hidden or discarded. It was sitting upright, almost as if waiting to be found, protected, untouched, preserved. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. A volunteer searching the area noticed something carved into the bark of a nearby tree. At first, he thought it was graffiti, but when he looked closer, his stomach dropped. It was a crude drawing of a stick figure, arms stretched out, with what looked like long clawed fingers. Beneath it, 3 words carved deep into the wood. "Still with me." The carving was fresh, but the backpack had clearly been sitting there for months. So who carved it? Was it a cruel prank? Or was something in those woods deliberately leaving messages? The FBI got involved, and suddenly the case exploded in national headlines. Some investigators thought David had been taken by a recluse, someone living off the grid. Paranormal researchers called it evidence of a forest entity. Psychics offered visions of where David might be. Conspiracy theorists claimed government experiments were to blame. But after weeks of searching, there was still no body, no remains, only scattered belongings and terrifying clues. Finally, the FBI withdrew, calling the case unsolvable. And just when everyone thought the mystery had reached its end, the forest revealed it wasn't finished. Because decades later, another child would vanish in almost the same way. And what happened next was even more horrifying. In the summer of 1995, a 12-year-old girl named Sarah went camping with her uncle in the very same Mount Hood National Forest. The case had been cold for years. David's name had faded from headlines. Most visitors never even knew a boy had disappeared there. Sarah was shy, quiet, and loved drawing. That night, she sat near the campfire, sketching in her notebook, while her uncle gathered wood. The fire flickered low. The forest grew darker. That's when her uncle heard it. A laugh. High-pitched. Childlike. But it wasn't Sarah. She was sitting silently, head bent, focused on her page. The uncle turned toward the sound, scanning the trees. Nothing. Just black shapes between branches. He shook it off, thinking maybe it was another camper, but when he returned to the fire, Sarah was gone. Her notebook was still there, open. On the page was a drawing of tall trees, a crooked figure standing among them, and a small girl with no face. The search began immediately, and within hours, investigators realized the chilling similarities to David's case 17 years earlier. Dogs tracked Sarah's scent through the woods. But once again, the trail ended abruptly, as if she'd been lifted into the air and carried away. 3 days later, just like before, belongings were found, her shoes neatly side by side at the edge of a creek. Clean, untouched, not a single sign of struggle. But there was something else. Pinned to a nearby tree with a rusted nail was a piece of paper torn from Sarah's notebook. On it was another drawing. The same crooked figure, but this time holding hands with a smaller child. The forest fell silent again. Investigators couldn't explain it. The odds of two children vanishing in the same forest under such bizarre circumstances with nearly identical clues. Impossible. Unless something or someone was repeating the same pattern. Locals began whispering about the legend of the Watcher. A spirit said to inhabit the deeper woods, luring children with strange sounds, then taking them far away where no one could follow. Some claimed the Watcher wasn't a ghost, but something older, an ancient presence that demanded offerings. The FBI returned, pressured by the shocking similarities, but just like before, they left without answers. No body, no signs, just more mystery. And then came the final blow. Months later, hunters stumbled upon a cave deep in the forest. Inside, on the walls, were dozens of drawings scratched into the stone. Stick figures, trees, childlike sketches of animals. But in every single drawing, there was always the same tall, crooked figure, sometimes with one child, sometimes with two, sometimes surrounded by many. Near the back of the cave, lying in the dirt, was Sarah's hair clip. Searchers scoured every inch of the cave. There were no bones, no bodies, just the haunting images, staring back from the stone, as if children had been drawing them for years. Who made them? Some experts suggested kids could have stumbled into the cave over decades and left drawings for fun. But how did Sarah's clip end up there? Why were the figures always the same? And here's the detail that still chills anyone who hears it. At the farthest corner of the cave, away from all the stick figures, was one final carving. Unlike the crude drawings, this one was neat, deliberate, precise. 4 words carved deep into the rock. "I'll bring another soon." No one knows who carved it, or when. The forest was eventually closed off for years after Sarah's disappearance. Rangers warned campers away, but even now, those who live near Mount Hood say strange things happen there. Campfires suddenly extinguished by cold wind, laughter echoing in the trees with no children around. Belongings, scarves, shoes, even toys, appearing on trails without explanation. And sometimes, hunters report seeing pale figures between the trees, always watching, never approaching. David's body was never found. Sarah's body was never found. But their belongings, their drawings, and their messages tell a story more terrifying than any official report ever could. And maybe the scariest part is this: these disappearances aren't unique to Oregon. Across America's national parks, from Yosemite to the Smokies, there are hundreds of similar cases. Children vanishing within seconds, belongings neatly placed miles away, no bodies, no answers, just questions. So I'll leave you with this. When you walk into the forest, when the branches sway and the air grows still, listen closely. If you hear laughter that shouldn't be there, if you find a jacket folded on a rock or shoes neatly placed on the ground, turn back, because once the watcher has chosen you, no trail, no search party, and no FBI agent will ever bring you back.